A Doll Behind the Curtain. By Sadeq Hedayat. The summer vacation had started. In the corridor of the school in Le Havre, the students left the school whistling and cheering with their suitcases in their hands. Only Mehrdad was standing still, looking despairingly at his suitcase. The principal with his bald head and protruding belly came up to him and asked, "Are you leaving too?" Mehrdad's ears turned red, and he bowed his head. The principal repeated, "We are very sorry that you will not be with us next year. You really were a role model for our students in terms of behavior and manners. But a word of advice from me to you, be less shy, be braver, that is a flaw for a young man like you. You must have courage in life." Instead of answering, Mehrdad replied, "I too regret leaving your school." The principal said goodbye, shook his hand and walked away. The school porter carried Mehrdad's suitcase to the end of Anatole France Street and put him in a cab for him. Mehrdad tipped him and they said goodbye to each other. Mehrdad had spent 9 months at the school in Le Havre to improve his French. The day he parted from his friends in Paris, he went to Le Havre as obedient and mature as a sheep that is reluctant to part from its flock. His behavior and manners at school were praised by the director and the principal. He was obedient, reserved, and quiet, studied hard and kept to the school rules. Nevertheless, he was always sad and depressed. Apart from completing tasks and memorizing lessons, he knew nothing else. It seemed as if he was only born to prepare for class, because his thoughts never wandered beyond the school environment and textbooks. He had an ordinary appearance, he was tall and thin, with lifeless round eyes. The regimented life at school, the routine meals, the lessons, the sleeping and waking times had shaped his soul with uniformity. Occasionally, Mehrdad felt a sense of loneliness in the school, among students whose thoughts did not match his own, in a language he barely understood, with foreign customs and habits, with different food, like a prisoner feels. On Sundays, when he had a few hours off and went for a walk, he would sit for hours on a bench in the public park in front of the town hall and watch the girls and people walking by, the women knitting, and the sparrows and pigeons roaming freely in the grass. Sometimes he would bring a piece of bread, crumble it up and feed the sparrows, or he would sit on a hill overlooking the lighthouses by the sea and watch the waves and the cityscape. When the weather was bad, he went to a cafe to review his lessons. Being rather unsociable, he had no friends or companions and knew no other Iranians with whom he could socialize. Mehrdad was very shy. The French students teased him, and when they talked about women, dancing, leisure, sports, and their romantic escapades, Mehrdad always agreed with them respectfully, without being able to add anything from his own life experiences to their love stories, because he was a mama's boy, shy, sad and depressed. He had never spoken to a strange woman before, and his parents had filled his head with advice and teachings from 1,000 years ago. To make sure he did not lose his way, they had betrothed him to his cousin Dirakhshanda and celebrated the engagement. They considered this the ultimate sacrifice and a great favor they had done their son by raising him to be a chaste, pure-hearted, and ethical young man, as was the custom 2,000 years ago. Mehrdad was 24 years old, but he lacked the courage, experience, education, cunning and bravery in life that a 14-year-old European child might have. He was always sad and reserved. His only romantic memory is limited to the day he left Tehran when Dirakhshanda came to see him off with teary eyes. But Mehrdad could not find the right words to comfort her, perhaps out of shyness. Although he had grown up in the same house as his cousin and they had played together as children, he still remembered Dirakhshanda until the moment the ship Krasin left Bandar Pahlavi, meandered through the water and the green, humid shores of Iran slowly disappeared into the fog and darkness. He often thought of her during his first months abroad, but gradually he forgot about Dirakhshanda. During Mehrdad's studies, there were several vacations at school, but he stayed in school during all these breaks and was busy with his studies. After leaving school, he went straight to a boarding house he had seen before. He rented a room and on the very first night, inspired by the romantic tales and adventures of his schoolmates at the Grand Tavern, the casino and others, he decided to go to the casino for the first time. He shaved in the evening, had dinner, and before going to the casino, as it was still early, he took a walk to the Rue de Paris, the busy street of Le Havre that leads to the harbor. Mehrdad walked slowly, quietly observing his surroundings, looking at the shop windows. He had money, he was free, he still had 3 months to go, and he planned to enjoy his freedom this evening by going to the casino. As he strolled leisurely, he stopped in front of a large shop window and looked inside. His gaze fell on the statue of a woman with blonde hair, who held her head at an angle and smiled. The long eyelashes, the large eyes and white neck, a hand on her hip, her dress in the blue light of the spotlight made the statue seem strangely attractive to him. So much so that he involuntarily stopped, frozen and hypnotized by the sight of her. This was not just a statue, but a woman, no, more than a woman, an angel smiling at him. The dark blue eyes, the noble smile, a smile beyond his imagination, the slender, delicate, well-proportioned figure, all this surpassed the embodiment of love, thought and beauty that he could imagine. Moreover, this girl did not speak to him, he was not forced to woo her with tricks and lies, did not have to court her, did not have to be jealous, she was always silent, always in a beautiful state that represented the highest of his thoughts and desires. She needed neither food nor clothing, made no excuses, never fell ill and had no expenses. She was always content, always smiling, but more importantly, she never spoke, never expressed an opinion, and there was no fear of their characters clashing. A face that never wrinkled, never changed, her belly never swelled, she never got out of shape. And she was cold too. All these thoughts ran through his mind. If he could touch her, smell her, kiss her, put on the scent he loved, he would not even be ashamed of this woman. Because she would never cheat on him, there would be no formalities between them, and he would always remain the chaste, pure-hearted Mehrdad. But where would he put this statue? No, none of the women he had ever seen could compare with this statue. The smile and the expression in her eyes had given this statue an unnatural soul in his eyes. What surprised him even more was that the statue's overall appearance was not dissimilar to certain facial expressions of Dirac-Chanda, except that Dirac-Chanda's eyes were hazel while the statue's were blonde. But Dirac-Chanda was always melancholic and sad, while the smile of this statue evoked joy and 1,000 emotions in Mehrdad. Under the statue was a cardboard sign with the inscription 350 francs. Was it possible to buy this statue for 350 francs? He was prepared to give everything he owned, even his clothes, to the shopkeeper, to own this statue. He stared at it for a while, but suddenly he was afraid of being ridiculed. He dismissed the idea of going to the casino because he felt that his life would be meaningless without this statue. If only this statue could be his, if only he could look at it all the time. Suddenly he realized that perhaps it was not appropriate to stand in front of a shop window with women's clothes, and he imagined that all eyes were on him, but he did not dare to enter the store and complete the purchase. He wished someone would come out secretly, sell him the statue and take his money so he would not have to do it in public. As he looked through the glass, he saw 2 women in the store talking, one of whom pointed at him. Mehrdad's face turned as red as a flame. He looked up and saw the name of the store, Magasin Sigrand. He slowly moved away and took a few steps back. He walked on involuntarily, his heart racing, barely seeing where he was going. The statue with its enchanting smile lingered before his eyes, and he feared that someone might buy it before he did. He wondered why the others were so indifferent to the statue. Perhaps it was a trick because he knew that this desire was not natural. He remembered that he had spent his whole life in the shadows, in darkness. He didn't love his fiancée, Dirac-Chanda. He only showed affection out of obligation to his mother. He knew that it wasn't easy for him to enter into a relationship with a foreign woman, as he had an aversion to dancing, talking, dressing up, flattering and all the necessities that go with it. In addition, his shyness and lack of courage held him back. Was he so naive? Did he not know that this wish, which went against the general will, would make him a laughingstock? Didn't he realize that this statue made of cardboard, porcelain, paint and artificial hair was like a doll given to a child? She couldn't speak, her body wasn't warm, and her face never changed. And yet it was precisely these qualities that Mehrdad loved about the statue. He feared a living person who could speak, whose body was warm, who could agree or disagree with him, who could stir up his jealousy. No, he needed this statue for his life and couldn't go on living without it. Could he have all that for just 350 francs? He entered the store. A pretty girl in a black dress and white apron gave him an artificial smile, stepped forward and asked, "Sir, what would you like?" Mehrdad pointed to the statue behind the glass and said, "This statue. Would you like the pistachio green dress? We also have it in other colors. Please wait a moment. Our employee will try it on for you. You wanted the pistachio green dress for your fiancée, did not you?" "Sorry, I wanted the statue." "The statue? What do you mean, the statue?" Mehrdad realized that he had made a strange request, but he did not let himself get flustered. As if inspired, he said, "Yes, the statue as it is, with its dress. I am a foreigner and I own a tailor's shop. I wanted the statue as it is." "Ah, that's complicated. I will have to ask the store owner." She turned to another woman and said, "Hey Susan, call Mr. Leon." Mehrdad approached the statue, and Mr. Leon, with his gray beard, black clothes and gold watch chain, came up to Mehrdad after speaking to the saleswoman and said, "Sir, you wanted the statue? As we are colleagues, I will give it to you as it is, including the clothes, for 2,200 francs, with a discount of 900 francs. Because it cost us 2,750 francs to make this statue. The dress itself is worth 350 francs. This is the finest statue in pure porcelain. I congratulate you, you must be an expert too. This is the work of the famous artist Rockro. As we wanted to introduce new statue models, we are selling this statue at a loss, but know that this is an exception as we normally do not sell store fittings to customers. I should also mention that we can crate it for you." Mehrdad blushed and did not know how to respond to the shopkeeper's detailed and friendly speech. Instead of replying, he reached into his side pocket, took out 2,000 franc bills and a 500 franc bill, handed them to the shopkeeper and received 300 francs in change. Could he live for a month on 300 francs? What did it matter because he had reached the maximum of his desire? 5 years after this incident, Mehrdad returned to Tehran with 3 suitcases, one of which was very large and resembled a coffin. What surprised his family, however, was that Mehrdad behaved very formally towards his fiancée Dirac Shanda and did not even bring her a souvenir. On the 3rd day, his mother scolded him, reminding him that Dirac Shanda had waited for him at home for 6 years, rejecting several suitors, and that he was obliged to marry her. But Mehrdad listened to her calmly and explained clearly that he had changed his mind and decided never to marry. His mother was upset and blamed his change of heart on his treatment of foreigners and a change in his beliefs. However, they realized that Mehrdad was no longer the obedient and humble son he used to be. This change in his attitude was attributed to his interaction with foreigners and a change in his beliefs. What made the family suspicious of Mehrdad was that he placed a statue of a woman dressed in pistachio green behind the door in his private room, one hand on her hip, the other at her side, smiling. A patterned curtain hung in front of it, and at night, when Mehrdad came home, he would close the doors, play a gramophone record, drink alcohol, pull back the curtain from the statue and then sit mesmerized by her beauty for hours. Sometimes, under the influence of alcohol, he would get up, approach the statue and stroke her hair and chest. His whole romantic life revolved around this, and for him the statue was the embodiment of love, desire and longing. Over time, his family, especially Dirac Shanda, who was curious about this role, realized that the statue had a secret. Dirac Shanda mockingly called it the behind-the-curtain doll. Mehrdad's mother even tried to get him to sell the statue or give Dirac Shanda her dress as a souvenir, but he always refused. Dirac Shanda, on the other hand, tried to win Mehrdad's heart by adopting the style and taste of the statue. She styled her hair like the statue, had a pistachio green dress tailored in the same style, and even chose her shoes in the statue's image. When Mehrdad was not at home, she would go to his room, stand in front of the mirror and imitate the statue's pose, tilting her head and smiling as she tried to capture its enigmatic and captivating look. Her slight resemblance to the statue made this easier. Dirac Shanda spent hours comparing her body to the statue's, trying to match its shape and posture. When Mehrdad came home, she would subtly show herself to him in various ways. At first her efforts were in vain as Mehrdad ignored her, but her persistence gradually drew his attention and triggered an inner conflict within him. He was torn between the old, color-faded statue that represented his youth and his love, and Dirac Shanda, who had suffered and waited for him and conformed to his tastes. Who could he be overlooking? Mehrdad felt that he could not simply overlook the statue that embodied his love. Did not she have a special life, a unique place in his heart? How much had she deceived him? How much had she entertained his thoughts? She had given him pleasure, and in his mind this statue was not just made of clay and artificial hair, but a living being that had a more real existence for him than a real person. Could he just throw it on the floor or give it to someone else? Leave it behind a shop window for strangers to marvel at its beauty, caress it with their eyes, or even break it, those lips he had kissed so often, that neck he had caressed? Never. He had to break up with her, kill her the way you would kill a living person, with your own hands. Mehrdad bought a small revolver for this purpose. But every time he wanted to put his thought into action, he hesitated. One evening, when Mehrdad, drunk and unconscious, entered his room later than usual, he switched on the light. Then, as usual, he drew back the curtains, took a bottle of schnapps from the cupboard, turned up the gramophone, put on a record and drank 2 glasses of alcohol in a row. Then he sat down on the bench in front of the statue and looked at it. Mehrdad looked at the statue's face for a long time but did not see it because it automatically formed in his mind. He simply did it out of habit because he had been doing it that way for years. After staring blankly for a while, he slowly stood up and approached the statue, stroked its hair, and then placed his hand on its neck. But suddenly, as if he had touched molten iron, he withdrew his hand and took a step back. Could this be true? Could it be possible? No, there was no doubt about it. Had he been dreaming? Was it a nightmare? Was it because he was drunk? He wiped his eyes with his sleeve and sat down on the bench to collect his thoughts. Suddenly, at that moment, he saw the statue coming towards him with measured steps. Mehrdad made a desperate move to flee, but then a thought occurred to him. Involuntarily, he reached into his trouser pocket, pulled out the revolver and fired 3 shots in quick succession at the statue. Suddenly he heard a groan and the statue fell to the ground. Mehrdad bent down in panic and lifted the statue's head. But it was not the statue. It was Dirac Shanda, drowning in her blood. We hope you have enjoyed watching the video. Please support our channel by subscribing if you are interested in the contents.